Hey, Alan.
How's it going?
Very well, and you?
Pretty good. How's your LTF?
Awesome. I love this event.
Yeah, it's wild. It's crazy how literally everybody is here.
Everybody's here. That's why I come year after year.
It's amazing. Okay, so the first question I get to ask you today is, do you remember the first time we met?
Yeah, I absolutely do. So we first met over Zoom. It was 2021. We started the company. It was still the tail of the pandemic.
Total pandemic, right?
Yep.
In your house.
Yeah. So yeah, we spoke several times over Zoom, and then I think we finally met in person in SF, probably 22. Had a coffee one Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first time, right?
What's funny from that era, and obviously now we're super proud to be investors in you guys and everything, but I remember back then, the first time I was meeting people in person in 22, and they said, "Oh, we've never met in person." I was like, "Really? We've never met in person?" Because it felt like we already knew each other from all the interactions.
What's the best piece of unconventional advice that you have ever received? You probably received a lot of advice over the years, but
that's fun. Well, I'm going to ask you too. But so I've had some amazing mentors because of Endeavor. I've learned a ton from Reid Hoffman. I've learned a ton from Jason Green, who's a partner at Emergence. And maybe it's something from Jason that stands out for me. Was he shared this quote that I think it's possible that Bill Gates said it, but who knows who really said it originally. But Jason said, look, for most leaders and for most human beings, really, we way overestimate what we can do in 1 year. Mm-hmm. But we underestimate what we can do in 10 years.
Yep.
And so the advice piece of that is to the degree possible, try to think 10 years at a time, or think in decades and play the long-term game. And I found that it's very powerful. It's really hard to do, but if you can do it yourself and if you can help your teams and people do it, long-term thinking is a very real competitive advantage. We heard it this morning, right? Marcos Galperin talking about how they built Meli over this crazy time. I mean, it's compounding in a whole bunch of ways, but I think it's sort of this compounding of human capital and social capital. I don't know. I now try to give that advice to a lot of the people who work with me and work for me.
No, totally agree. And I think you and Endeavor all together are a great example of that, right? Mm-hmm. It's just incredible how the story started in Argentina and Chile with Linda and what it is today. 45 markets, is that right?
Yeah, 45 countries.
Yeah. So true testament of that quote.
Well, we're not done, right? We have ambitious plans to take Endeavor to 100 countries, so we'll see.
That's awesome.
If we can do that in the next 10 years. Actually, one other quote that I really like, I remember it's a Reid Hoffman thing he told me, but when we started a fund for Endeavor, I didn't know how to be a venture capitalist, right? I didn't know anything about this world. I was an undergraduate German literature major, right? So, but Reid said this thing is, look, venture is not that complex. It's not easy, don't get me wrong, but it's fairly basic. It's simple. You only have to do two things. First, you have to be contrarian.
Yep.
You have to deeply believe something other people don't believe. And then you have to be right. And you have to do it in that order. And it turns out, I think, this belief in Latin America and belief in emerging markets and belief that entrepreneurs are everywhere, right? Not just in Silicon Valley. That's the contrarian idea that's kind of made my whole career, right? And kind of made this into what it is.
Love it.
What's something, Gastón, that people might not know about you that motivated you to start Pomelo?
Okay. So I would say two things. First one is actually pretty known. I started this company out of my own frustration. Mm-hmm. I previously built a neobank and I was super frustrated having to work with local incumbents when it comes to infrastructure across Latin America. And the same was true for my co-founders. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of a key sort of insight that led us to creating the company.
That story we know because it was in the pitch from the beginning, right? I remember you telling us about that.
No, maybe the other slightly more kind of personal drive that it's always been with me is, so at this point in time, I've lived in several countries, all the way from Switzerland to Peru and Ireland and the US. But when I was very young, we went and lived in Peru for 4 years, and this was, in the 80s, and Peru was going through very difficult times, and they had a guerrilla movement that was called the Shining Path, or
Yeah.
Sendero Luminoso in Spanish. And it was a great opportunity for my dad. It was actually very hard on my mom and just in general. But if you think about it, today we're trying to bring a completely new financial services infrastructure to the region that hopefully boosts capitalism and business in general. And I was actually born and raised in a completely different setup, with a guerrilla movement, literally behind my yard. And my mom would put my brother and I in a room with no windows just to protect us. So in many ways, it sort of witnesses, how Latin America as a region, sort of evolved and went from, a completely different sort of setup to hopefully emerging as a truly, outstanding region, and even more so now with geopolitics, which I think, positions Latin America in a completely different place. So there's like a very internal sort of drive and motivation there in terms of how I grew up and was raised, and the kind of what was around us and what we're trying to achieve, broadly speaking, in terms of boosting business in the region. Okay, my turn. What's been the biggest shift in tech that has impacted your business?
Yeah, I'd have to say, if I'm going to give a today 2025 answer, it's wild to see how much is happening with AI outside of Silicon Valley. Right?
Yep.
I mean, I live in California. Obviously, there's lots of exciting stuff happening there. But I think 4 out of our most recent 5 investments are in Eastern Europe, in places like Romania and Bulgaria and Poland. We just did this company called 11 Labs that people see. It's amazing, like voice AI technology. People see like, oh my God, an amazing Silicon Valley company. Like, guys, they're building that in Warsaw, Poland, right? So there is this shift in technology that's really, really interesting. To the question before, the thing about my background that some people don't know is that I am like 100% gringo, right? I'm just a gringo from California, but I lived in Argentina when I was 19 and 20.
I know.
And that's actually where this all started for me, was like, I lived in Argentina during this very chaotic time. I mean, we've talked about it. But it made a really big impression on me that like, wow, emerging markets, and particularly Latin America, is this place I want to spend my life, like working on, and it's been a
No,
big
that's
deal.
awesome, and it's a great story. And in many ways, it's the opposite for me, as I described, raised in between Peru and Argentina, but then worked and lived abroad in more mature markets, and trying to adopt a lot of that framework and bring it back. So in many ways, kind of opposite.
We have like a mirror life here, the Argentino and the Argengringo. Cool, man.
Awesome.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course. Happy to.